2017 general election. And tonight, it is exactly 3 months to this year's general election, being the 8th day of May 2017. Exactly 91 days, according to our countdown there at the bottom end of your screen. 91 days to the election. We are going to be taking a look at the political intrigues between the two main sides of the political divide, that is the National Super Alliance, the opposition, and the ruling Jubilee Party. Who is more prepared for this year's general election? Shall be taking a look at that. And also we are focusing on the issues of the elections. One thing that has come up in the last few days is the cost of living, skyrocketing cost of living. We're asking you if you think that will be one of the key issues determining this year's general election. Later on in the program, first of all, my guests are here with me. That is Richard Mutinda Kavemba, a political analyst, as well as Calvin Owidi, political analyst, to be helping me to put perspective into this issue. Later on the program, we shall be speaking about the NASA intrigues, especially concerning Lower Eastern politics. We shall be speaking to the governor of Makueni, Professor Kivutha Kibwana. That's later on. Many thanks for joining us. Let's now take a look at our Twitter poll question. We are asking you, what are the major issues that will determine the 2017 general election? In your opinion, tell us what you think. Text and tweet us at Ben_Kitili is my Twitter handle. At KTN News, the hashtag is Choice2017. We shall be sampling some of your views during this live newscast. This is Choice 2017. And to help me put this issue into perspective, 91 days to the general election, our political analyst Richard Kavemba and Calvin Owidi. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program tonight.
Thank you.
Let me start with you. Between the two sides of the political divide, the major ones, who do you think is better prepared and why?
At this time, it is not even preparation only. It is the circumstances under which the election is going to be held. First of all, you know, the majority of the Kenyan voter, his primary goal is what he eats. And as you can see, food is a big issue. The food prices have skyrocketed. And in fact, what I'm seeing Jubilee is doing now is just to put a brave face. But actually, right now, the key issue to the key voter is bread and milk, which is so high today that preparation or no preparation, they are in a corner this time round.
Right. We'll get into that issue of the skyrocketing cost of living. Mr. Kavemba, according to, from where you sit, who between Jubilee and NASA is better prepared for the election?
Of course, I think Jubilee is much more better prepared, and for some obvious reasons. First, their leadership is very clear, well defined. It has been because they are defending. So at the very top, there is no contest, and there has been no contest. So NASA up to the other day, up to the 27th, actually had not defined their leadership going into the election. And we are less than a week since they now announced their lineup, and the shockwaves have already been, started being felt. And
what do you mean shockwaves?
Shocks, as in some reactions to some things that are happening within the coalition. You've mentioned that later after in this program, we're going to be talking about Lower Eastern. There is a lot that is happening there that is within the NASA coalition. It is the aftermath of the naming of the coalition and the handling of the nominations. If you look at Jubilee, we do not have such serious matters. There have been a few fallouts here and there, but rarely do you hear of someone who's outrightly being denied their victory, that at the polling center you are announced the winner. In short, they are not as major. So both parties have got their issues, but Jubilee is much more prepared because at the national level, there is no contest. Actually, what Jubilee has been waiting for, and which has now been well defined, is who are the people we are going to work with. And that's why they waited for the members to sort that out by going into the nomination. Like, for instance, in Nairobi today, if for instance, our party leader, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, wants to do around in Nairobi now after the nominations, it is going to be very easy for him. It's going to be very clear who is going to be entitled to speak on behalf of Jubilee at every constituency, who's entitled to speak at every ward.
Protocol is very clear for
so
you.
Yeah, that is...
Owidi,
yes.
NASA has been accused of spending the last 3 years deciding who will be the presidential flag bearer. And even now, as Kavemba is saying, NASA is still disorganized. What do you say to that?
No. In any game, the defending champion doesn't have a contest before the finals. Jubilee was a defending champion, so they didn't have to compete to get a candidate. NASA had to compete, and we give them credit. 5 people, and they agreed without a fight. I think that is an excellent performance this time round. Jubilee is telling us that, oh, NASA is disorganized. That is their own judgment. NASA itself has judged themselves and know they are best prepared for this battle this time round. They have even brought in 2 more people to upgrade their fighting force. So I think NASA is much, much more prepared now than even before then. Jubilee must also realize that they rode on the sympathy of The Hague, which is no longer there. They rode at a time when we did not know their shortcomings. Now we do.
All right.
We are going to the election at a time when you can see this food crisis. The key thing that they keep on telling us again and again is the SGR. But you see, they are riding on the fact that majority of the voter does not realize that SGR was a special tax. SGR is a loan of 327 billion from the Chinese government. They were told to pay 10 billion. What they did, they introduced a new tax in all imported goods that collected in excess of the 10% that the Chinese wanted. But that tax has not even stopped. But they are riding on the fact that the people don't know about all this.
So Mr. Owidi is saying, alluding to the fact that there might not be as much as a big voter turnout as it was in 2013 because of the issue of the ICC, which Kenyans were reported to be voting against, and also the issue, he has also mentioned the issue that the fact that Jubilee, does not have something to show for what it has been in office for the last 4 years,
from
the SGR, according to his words.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, because I actually don't think, you see, this notion and this theory that there is going to be low voter turnout in Jubilee strongholds first was dispelled by the nomination exercise. I think you saw the numbers that came out. Actually, the party had first underprepared. Probably it was working with the same notion that there is going to be some voter apathy and people will not come out. So they printed less ballots. You saw what happened. They had to call off the exercise because clearly people outnumbered the ballots. So there are several factors at play. First is that devolution has taken root. So the devolution, the players at the local level, the interest of the people at the local level because of what they've learned about the devolved power system there's a lot of interest that will actually have nothing to do with the national politics.
Right.
Even the local politics itself, the issue of having governors, the issue of having county assemblies, it's enough to activate enough voter turnout, even without coming to because people are using the notion that, like for instance, why did we have a voter turnout? It was not because of the presidential vote.
All right.
In Jubilee, we were not nominating the president, you know that. But we had extremely high voter turnout, especially compared to past nomination exercises. Why was that? It was because of the new devolved structure of government. In Nairobi, you can imagine, we have 85 wards. In Jubilee, we had 709 MCA aspirants. You imagine each of them was mobilizing. Now that explains why we had a very high voter turnout across the country, because the mobilization at the grassroots was quite effective. So voter turnout is going to be taken care of by very many factors other than the national factors, because you know very well, all politics is local.
All right. We'll get into those numbers in a short while. Let's speak about something that has been making headlines in the last couple of days, and that is the skyrocketing cost of living. Remember, in our big question, in our Twitter poll question, we're asking you, what are the major issues that you think will determine this year's general election? And that issue has been talked about, skyrocketing prices of sugar, milk, and bread. We have reports of Kenyans in Western Kenya near the Uganda border going into neighboring Uganda to buy commodities. Let's take a look at some what has been said about this issue of the cost of living.
Our economy is in turmoil. The cost of living is beyond reach for millions of our citizens.
Na wenzangu, mimi sisemi ya kwamba kwa muda wa miaka hiyo yote we don't have problems. We do. Kama sasa tunajua gharama ya unga imeenda juu, na sisi tuwafanya juu chini kuona ni nini ambayo tutaweza kufanya tuhakikishe ya kwamba tumesaidia mwananchi kushukisha hiyo bei ya unga na sukari na mambo yale mengine.
Both the NASA presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga and the President Uhuru Kenyatta speaking about this issue of cost of living in their parties' respective national delegates conventions this past weekend. And we did see, let me start with you. What is your take on, we did see Raila Odinga put pressure on the Jubilee government and even make some promises about reducing rents, which the Jubilee administration, Deputy President, rubbished those promises. And then we did see on Saturday, President Uhuru Kenyatta looking like he was blaming the NASA leaders for cost of living. What is your take on that?
Not really. I think somebody fighting will always find a weapon. Even if it's a blade of grass, even if it's a cup of water, he will always fight. But we have seen right now that President Uhuru Kenyatta has accepted that they have issues, they have problems. Naturally, a competitor never accepts, but this is overwhelming to him. He has accepted that they have problems, especially the food prices. You notice that in 2013, President Uhuru Kenyatta introduced 1.5% on all imports, including food inputs. And he has not withdrawn it, but still he is telling Kenyans he's looking for ways of reducing the prices of food. No, he is not serious. He knows that this is meant for the elite. But the poor voter down there does not even understand what he's talking about. Them, they want to see the price of unga down, the price of milk down, and then they vote. So where we are going today, Jubilee is in a corner. They are just struggling to put a brave face into this battle.
Mr. Kavemba, in the retail shops, 2 kilograms of sugar right now going at 400 shillings on average. Is this really acceptable? There
has been a problem, and one of the problems actually has been inflation, and it's what you're talking about now, that food prices have gone extremely high. And it's unfortunate that, you know, some things, as much as people wouldn't want them to be brought out, is that there are things that are at play here. One is that we've been going through a very severe drought. Actually, I think you saw Ndakaine, the dam that gives Nairobi water, it was at its lowest. And they said that it actually had never gotten to the levels that it got. And what that means is that there will be challenges of food production. That means that supply, then the demand outdoes supply, and that pushes the prices up. And one of the things that really pushes inflation up is the increase of prices in food stuff, because that's basics, and people are... Now that, unfortunately, has become a burden of... the truth of the matter is that even if it was NASA that was running the government today, they would still be having the same challenges.
But it is Jubilee that is running.
That's what I'm telling you, that if whether, you know, that it's like blaming government for an earthquake. You know, the question is, what are the mitigating factors? So what we need to ask ourselves is, yes, there is a direct situation that has really has pushed the prices of foodstuff high. What is the government doing to mitigate against that? And it is what the head of state was talking about. And I think they have some lined measures, which we hope that in the next few weeks, people are going to feel the effect of the interventions. Because you also understand that we're in a free market economy, and interventions, the government has to be very careful so that it also does not interfere with the...
But Mr. Kavemba, inflation is highly a natural disaster. What is your take on this, Awidi?
Ben, I cannot agree with him anywhere in whatever he has said. Kenya has planning ministry. And this drought was forecast well about a year ago. And we know in science, you can store grains for over 3 years. You remember somewhere in the Bible in Egypt, there was drought for 7 years. But they had food until they had to give to Israel. A nation with a working ministry of planning and drought, they can focus. And then they come tell us that this is a natural disaster. It is not. It is sleeping on the job.
Is NASA going to make this issue their key campaign issue against Jubilee?
It is not going to be the key, but it is going to be one of the key. Because we have so many issues with the Jubilee. Today, when I was coming here, it took 1 hour to get here. In the Kibaki-Raila government, they had planned for a flyover all the way from here, all the way to Westlands. That was shelved by Jubilee to do the SGR, which is not going to help the local man. Which poor man voter in Kenya is going to use the SGR? Nobody. It's going to be for the elite, for the rich business people.
What is your take on that, first of all? And also, if NASA make this issue of cost of living one of their key campaign issues, that is going to put you on the back for visitors.
I want to talk about preparedness.
Right.
We've been in this country, and in a few years ago, you could see that whenever we had search, we used to see pictures of Kenyans dying, starving to death. I think unless you are the players in the media tell us that you've been deliberately hiding such, we've not been seeing such. If there's evidence of planning, then that should be the evidence of planning. Because the other times, people used to starve to death because the government had not prepared. This time, there is some semblance of preparedness. Probably what the government underestimated was the drought was not going to take as long as it has been a prolonged drought. And probably they had planned thinking that by some time the rains would have set in, and that didn't happen. But saying that the government has not prepared is really not honest, because we know, we've been seeing, and not long ago, that every time you see in Turkana, people have been buried. There's even a time a chief was sacked because he confirmed some death, and it was controversial because it was like it's embarrassing. We've not heard of that. That simply means that there has been some mitigating measures, and that's what I was trying to tell you. That the challenge of Jubilee, and which we have to give them credit for, is that this time they've been a bit more prepared. And that's why we've not had the extreme cases of Kenyans starving to death.
Here's a question
before
we move out of this.
Yes.
Kenyans who 4 years ago were buying sugar at 200 shillings, what will Jubilee tell them to convince them that they are still the people to run this country, yet they are going and buying sugar at double the price 4 years later?
Yeah, I've said that there are several factors at play. So there is a lot of explaining. First, let me agree that there is a lot of explaining to do.
That is the
because we've said politics is local, and it never gets as local as to your homestead. And you know now this is politics that has gotten to people's homestead. That is why NASA wants to run away with it, because this can really, people can identify with it. Because the truth of the matter is that people are feeling the pressure, and at their homestead level. That means this is across the country. So it is quite a very hot political issue. But the question is it really about bad governance, or is it about other external factors that we find ourselves where? You know, we are agricultural fed. And the truth of the matter is that when rains fail, then a very big chunk of our economy then is not functioning as is envisaged. That is the agricultural sector. So that I told you, under any government, unless the structure of our economy changes and we are no longer very much reliant on agriculture, then whenever there is shifts in the weather patterns, that will somehow have to reflect in our economy.
All right, let's move away from this issue of cost of living. Let's speak about some numbers that have been brandished by both sides of the political divide. Jubilee keep talking about a win of 70% plus one. NASA keep talking about 10 million strong. First of all, where is NASA, getting these numbers from? 10 million strong.
That kind of campaign is used just to radicalize the people, give them hope on both sides. But figures put on the table is you can look at the NASA stronghold, right from Nyanza, Western, part of Eastern. Now we are even talking about part of Rift Valley. We are talking about Nairobi. We have always beaten Jubilee. Mombasa is NASA. When you put these figures, because we have about 20 million registered voters, you see NASA has more than half. So that is where NASA gets the 20 million strong.
10 million strong.
10 million strong, sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
What is your take on the 10 million strong, those figures?
And maybe you can tell us which one is not going to be ours.
No, first, the good thing is he has said that it is based on stronghold, the assumptions.
Yes.
And I think I agree with him that it is just meant to psych people. It's in street language, you say kujichocha. So NASA guy is wanajichocha, 10 million strong. But like you said, hata sisi tunajichocha 70% plus.
Where does it come from?
You see, you've got to have projections when you're going into a competition. And our projection is that this time we are, the other time it was URP and TNA. Now it is much more, you know, it's a party that brought 14 parties. So we are hoping that we are going to get, you know, more than we got in the last election. That's where the 70+1, there are regions where we think voting is going to be quite very different. The Turkana areas, the northeastern frontier, we are expecting that the voting turnout, the voting patterns are really going to radically change from what they were. And that is what is going to add into our percentage from the 50% that we had last time.
Even though Musalia Mudavadi, with his 500,000 close to voters, are in NASA?
You see, the question is, you know, Musalia Mudavadi, the biggest chunk of the votes he got, if you go back to his results, was from Bungoma. And that was because the party leader of New Ford Kenya then, who's the current voter CS, endorsed him. He actually never vied. He was part of what we were calling the Amani coalition then. And the biggest chunk of the 480-something Mudavadi got was from Bungoma. This time, that chunk led by
is in Jubilee, you say?
Is in Jubilee. So those are dynamics that are at play here.
What is your take on 70+1 projection or propaganda, or however you want to look at it?
As I told you in the beginning, what Jubilee is trying to say is just to put a brave face. Kenyan politics revolves around first tribes, then personalities, then food. These other things come much, much later. In fact, political parties, which is counting to be 14, don't even count. People don't even know about them. Tomorrow, if Raila walks out of ODM and enters another party, the whole of his following will be with him in that party. So right now, it's only ODM which has added 2 more personalities. Jubilee has not added anybody.
Final thoughts as we round up this. In the next 3 months, 91 days to the elections today, what do you think will shape the campaigns going forward? Very quickly.
As I said earlier, it is what goes into the stomach of a Kenyan voter. A Kenyan voter is not really me and you. Our vote is about 5 or 10%. The Kenyan voter is that hustler in Kibera, in Mukuru, in Mathare. For him, it is ugali and milk and boga.
Mr. Kavemba?
Yeah, I don't think our voting patterns will change very much going into the election, considering the number of days. So the first, you know, our politics has been ethnic-based, like he's saying, and that is the same logic he's using to state the strongholds. There is no other logic. It is just the ethnic logic that these ethnic groups are known to vote with this. So we assume they'll be our stronghold. So that will take precedence. And then the issues of cost of living will now be number 2. But the politics of identity, the politics of ethnicity will clearly take precedence. It is the same logic that I'm telling you NASA is using to say 10 million strong. It is the same logic that Jubilee is also saying 70+1. So that will still take precedence. Then the cost of living will also be at play.
Thank you. Mutinda, Mr. Richard Kavemba and Calvin Owidi, political analyst here on Choice 2070. Thank you very much for your time. Just looking forward to what will be happening. Remember, today being the 8th day of May 2017, exactly 90 days or 91 days according to our countdown there, which counts down until 7th of August midnight to this year's general election. When we return after this commercial break, we shall be speaking to the governor of Makueni, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, speaking about NASA intrigues in as far as that part, the lower eastern part of Kenya is concerned, of course, the politics of Makueni and his re-election agenda. Don't go too far. On our Twitter poll question, we're asking you, what are the major issues that will, according to you, determine this year's election? Don't go too far. This is Choice 2017.